Welcome back to the Courier. It's election night 2016, and the update is that while it looks like Catherine King has held the seat of Ballarat, nationwide it's a bit of a cliffhanger. Anthony Green from the ABC is currently calling about 70 seats for the coalition and 64 for the ALP with 11 in doubt. So there's a long way for that story to run. Could be a hung parliament, but I think our focus is very much about Ballarat, and at I think about 50% vote counted.
Yeah, so we're just waiting on the pre-poll, and Ballarat North, for some reason there must be a hold up there, because most of the Ballarat, or all of the Ballarat votes from today are in.
Catherine's result essentially is a 2% swing to her, shoring up the seat for Labor Party, a seat that she's held since 2001. So it's now looking increasingly safe for Labor. A couple of interesting things in the results that have come in so far, Alex.
Yeah, so nationally, we're seeing the Nick Xenophon team come in. We're seeing Pauline Hanson probably coming back to the Senate. Those two are kind of shocking, probably Hanson more so than Nick Xenophon, who's been in the Senate for a while. Locally, we're seeing a slightly lower vote for Paul Tatchell than we would have thought. We've got the vote in from Bacchus Marsh. We've got the vote in from Mattingley. We've got the vote in from Darley, and you'd think he would have picked up quite a few votes from there. But sometimes these things are pretty hard to call, and Paul's run the campaign in a what would you say?
His own inimitable style, I think. Well, while we're talking about that, it seems to me, even though only 50% of the votes counted, looks like there's a victory speech occurring as we speak down in Trades Hall, where Catherine is. Well, let's just see if we can take you down there. No. Catherine is giving a victory speech, I think, about retaining the seat, which looks quite comfortably hers. So let's talk a little bit about what you think were the contributing factors, Alex, in this campaign. It's been a long campaign, but what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so looking at what the candidates have done over the last 8 weeks, Catherine has really hammered home the health message. On Friday,
okay, Pat,
she told me that her number one pitch to Ballarat to return her was that she, as part of a shortened Labor government, was they would protect Medicare.
So Alex and Eugene are doing a live broadcast now from the office, and then they'll throw to us.
She's promised
they'll throw
$5
to
million
Catherine and
for
Caleb, and then they'll throw to us.
the Wendouree Sports and Events Centre to be turned into a kind of regional events centre. She's promised some health money for
just on our Facebook page. So it'll just be streaming live on our Facebook
$1.5
page.
million.
Basically, I'll be asking you.
Compared to Corangamite, our neighbouring marginal seat, it's not much. But compared to the Liberals, it's a whole lot because they didn't promise anything.
Yeah, interesting campaign. We've said before that it's probably being fought on national issues because there hasn't been a big focus on Ballarat, certainly not like some of the neighbouring marginals. We haven't seen a leader of the major parties here. Haven't had a lot of largesse showered upon us, but seems to be a bit of a reflection of a national swing towards the Labor Party. Catherine's picked up about 1% in the primaries, and that's reflected in about a 2% gain on her overall hold on the seat. Sarah Wade for the Liberal Party has dropped about 3% in her primary. That's probably largely been picked up by Paul Tatchell, who's got about 4.5% of the National Party, of the total vote for the National Party. So that coalition two-party prefers. Increases for the Greens, 1.5% there, and obviously some of the other independents. Let's now have a think about, what does this mean for Ballarat as far as, there weren't many promises made?
Yeah, it's a tough one as well because we've got a member returned who's made promises that will come good as part of a shortened Labor government. So she's going to keep advocating for Ballarat, but we're not going to get that money. So from here, I guess we, keep looking at government fund packages to get the projects up. There's a lot of infrastructure that needs to be built in Ballarat to keep up with our growing population. So, yeah, it's tricky.
Having said that, we're not quite willing to call the national result. Seems things are strengthening for Catherine, the seat of Ballarat, but nationally it's still a bit of a cliffhanger with the coalition looking like having the slight advantage. But let's go to Fiona, who's at the George Hotel, Liberal Party's gathering point in Ballarat tonight, and talk to Sarah Wade, the Liberal Party candidate, about her campaign this year.
Yes, thanks, Eugene. I'm with Sarah Wade, who has just been telling us about how quick the process was from pre-selection into jumping straight into campaign mode. So it has been a hectic 6 months or so for you, hasn't it?
It certainly has, Sarah. Absolutely, yes, it has. And, it's funny because for me it was a very hectic 6 months, but a very short period to campaign, but we had the 8-week campaign.
Yeah, and how did you feel it went for you?
Well, it went very well, and the feedback I was getting from voters out there was that they liked what they were hearing. They were looking for something a little bit different, but it is what it is.
And what did you think the big issues were in the Ballarat electorate during this campaign?
Look, certainly what I was getting back, and I'll reiterate it once again, but it certainly was jobs. Certainly the CFA volunteers issue became pretty large close to the end of the campaign.
Yeah. Okay. And now you've obviously conceded the seat. How do you feel about that at the moment?
Look, I probably feel a little bit numb, but I'd obviously like to congratulate Catherine King and in retaining the seat. Yes, look, at this point, it probably hasn't completely sunk in, but yeah, absolutely, move on.
Okay, and I asked Craig the same question. Obviously, Ballarat didn't receive a lot of big projects or big funding during the campaign.
No, it's all right.
Do you think it was considered a marginal seat, or from both parties? Do you think it was considered a marginal seat, or do you think they sort of felt Catherine was pretty safe in the seat?
Look, I didn't really look at it that way at all. I've got to be honest with you. I really just focused on what I was hearing and what was coming back from the people. And that was really looking at it that we did need some good economic management, and that was really coming back. And look, Labor did a pretty good job with the Medicare issue. I can say that. And there was a pretty good scare campaign going there, and I will continue to say that. As far as we're concerned, the issues that were coming back to me were strong economic management, work jobs, work growth. At the end of the day, the people have voted, and it is what it is, and yeah.
Okay. Now it looks like the national vote, however, that the Liberal coalition will be getting back in. How do you feel about that, or is it too early to call?
Well, look, I certainly hope, and I'm that we're going to have a returned Melbourne General Government, of course, naturally, and I'd be feeling very, very positive that's going to be the case.
Okay, and what are the future prospects for you, Sarah? What's your plans now?
Well, I guess I'm going to, continue with the party, of course. That's something that's very passionate for me, and so I'm not going anywhere. And I'm certainly going to be continuing with a lot of the issues that I've picked up while I've been campaigning. So they're very passionate for me too. But I'm a lawyer by trade, so I guess I'm going to be going back to and getting some of those law books out and dusting them off the shelf and seeing how we go. Absolutely.
Okay, back to you, Eugene. We'll let Sarah go and enjoy a few well-earned wines.
Thanks.
Indeed. Thank you very much, Sarah. Gracious in defeat. And as Sarah said, it has been a long and difficult campaign for all the candidates, I imagine. I think Sarah seemed quietly confident that the coalition would be returned on a national level. That seems to still be hanging in the balance, but so far it would seem that the seat of Ballarat has been held by the sitting member, Catherine King, who will now probably be holding seat through to 2009. So what does it mean, do you think, for looking back at the campaign now, long campaign? Sarah seems to be sure that the Liberal Party was pushing on a lot of national issues that she was getting the feedback from voters. What are your thoughts on that, Alex?
Well, clearly Sarah's had a big focus on business, and she's spent a lot of time on the ground talking to people, which is obviously what you need to do as a candidate. And from her, from my discussions with her, she was keen to push the jobs and growth message that we got a bit tired of. But in reality, that was tax cuts for small business that are, that's always going to play well. So not sure where the votes were lying in between that policy and also they were looking for votes in the CFA policy. There was no real way they were going to fix it in any good time.
Well, the CFA, I think, was a sort of last-minute curveball. I know there's a lot of people who felt very passionate about it. It'll be interesting to see the booth-by-booth analysis to see if those regions which, have volunteer brigades, how strongly that issue impacted them. But I think at the same time it would be also fairly clear to say that health is a very serious issue that for Ballarat people, obviously a slightly older demographic, and it's also one of Catherine King's strengths, being the opposition spokesperson for health. And I think that's also one that's had, despite the coalition's accusations it was all a scare campaign, I think it's one that in the last couple of weeks has had quite a lot of resonance here.
Well, that's a good time for us to cross to Catherine.
That's right. I think what could be better than to hear it from the retained sitting member for Ballarat, Catherine King. So crossing over to Trades Hall now with Caleb Clough.
Thanks, Eugene. Catherine, thank you for talking to us this evening.
It's been my pleasure.
And congratulations.
Thank you. Well, we'll just wait until the final booths are in. We're still waiting for some of the bigger ones to come in, but it is looking likely that Labor will retain the federal seat of Ballarat, but hard-fought victory.
It's a curious election so far because it's gone against all the pundits' calls. It's very tight.
Sure.
What do you feel were the issues here in Ballarat that, certainly because you've had a swing back to you?
Look, I think there is absolutely no doubt the damage that's been done over the course of the last 2.5 years nationally on health has been probably one of the biggest issues here in this district. I think people have seen it firsthand and they understand that and really do understand the difference of what's actually been happening within the healthcare system. Obviously, the issues around jobs, education have also been that, and I think people have been not enamoured with some of the, not negatively necessarily locally, but some of the negatively nationally that's been happening with the Liberal Party over the course of last few years.
This is the 6th time you've won the seat now, but it must still be a bit of a tear for you because you may be going back as another term in opposition. Sure. How do you feel about that?
Well, we don't know yet. I guess nationally, I think I think the party could not have asked more of Bill Shorten. Frankly, I think he's done a terrific job, and let's see what's happening. I think the really interesting thing has been the swings that are happening in New South Wales. Some of the seats we're picking up there. Queensland, a few of the seats I wouldn't have expected to pick up, I must admit, and let's see what happens in Western Australia. I think it's been I think the polls have been right in the sense that it's been a very tight contest. And here we were, when you think where we were back in December last year, where people had basically written Labor off, frankly, to come this close and nearly tip over the line, let's see what happens, is a pretty extraordinary effort, frankly.
You've spent all day out on the hustings. Was there much feeling about the CFA issue?
No, not really. I'd have to say that the volunteers who were out, and there were a few out, were incredibly respectful. They were really terrific. They weren't saying that they wanted people to vote against the Labor Party at all. They weren't saying vote Liberal. They were saying we're unhappy about what's happening, and I'll, hopefully, if I'm definitely re-elected, then I'll be talking to all of those. I think we've got to make sure people's voices are heard through this process, but really make sure that we can actually bring people together, and that's what Labor's been saying federally all along, that this really needs an issue that needs to be resolved. We expect the state government to resolve it. We want people's voices to be heard through that process, and really that was what I saw today out on the hustings. There were a couple of people who brought it up as an issue, but I think it's pretty clear when you look at the results across the state that I think that's exactly what the volunteers have done. They've said, look, we're not happy. They wanted to show that they were not happy, but it hasn't had a huge impact on the actual vote itself.
When I was talking to John Mildren earlier, and it's great to have that sort of perspective of history.
It's such a lovely
and we were talking about how the demographic of Ballarat has changed, and it's really shifted the seat from being one that was once Labor, then Liberal, then Labor, then Liberal.
Yeah, sure.
What do you see the future of Ballarat being now? Because we're obviously proposed, it's been proposed another 50,000 people coming here.
Yeah. Well, look, I think it is changing the sense, but of course, John held the seat on very different boundaries, and in fact, he used to have Stawell and Balls Gap. I did in my first election as well, so it was very different boundaries. I think you were saying, there is a change, and there is certainly a change in people who are coming to Ballarat, whereas once we saw large-scale settlement from the western districts of the state here for our services, you're now seeing a whole new generation of people who've got no connection to Ballarat at all, who are coming in their 30s for great housing, great lifestyle, wanting to work, wanting to innovate here. So there is a change occurring. That's definitely the case. I meet new people, literally weekly who come here for that. How they're going to vote, who knows? And I think that at the end of the day, this seat is a seat that is proudly and fiercely about this community, and it will do what it thinks is best for this community. And each time I say to people, and I often have people come up and say, "Oh, you've got my vote," and I say, "Well, I want to deserve your vote. That's what it's my job, is to actually deserve your vote. And if you don't think I deserve it, then you shouldn't give it to me."
You
Can I
have
just
worked
break in from the newsroom here, Caleb?
Yes. Sorry, I'm getting one of the people
Getting
talking.
wound up.
No, I may well be. Yes, Alex. Yes.
We're looking at a possibly hung parliament here. We've got some independents.
I don't.
Sorry, keep going, Alex.
We've got some independents coming in. We've got a member of the Nick Xenophon team.
Yes.
Just interested in what Catherine's thoughts are on working with a really mixed parliament. Because Barry Cassidy's saying it's an option, and as a member of the opposition cabinet, she might have an interesting 3 years ahead.
The question's been asked, and I know you've been here before, the likelihood of a hung parliament and how you would feel about working with a hung parliament again.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know what the likelihood of that is, and I must admit I've only been concentrating on what's been happening here at the moment, so I haven't looked at the latest results. Look, we've worked in minority government before. It is hard work. It is really, really hard work. And that'll be a matter for Bill to try and sort out if that's what we want to do, if that's the likelihood of what's happening. But we're up for the challenge. I've got I've had the Shadow Health portfolio for the last 2.5 years. It is a policy area I love with a passion, and there are some great things that we want to be able to do. But let's see what happens. And I think it's way too early to say.
Right, it's been a long day, a long week, a long 8 weeks. So I'm going to say thank you very much for talking to us.
And I do just want to acknowledge the other candidates who've been in this race. I haven't had a chance. I've seen a few of them on the hustings today, but I do want to acknowledge, people don't put themselves, it's a hard thing to put yourselves forward for public office. It's not always, always successful, but I really do want to acknowledge, Sarah and Paul and Diane, who I've had a fair bit to do with, and some of the Senate candidates who've been locally, who've been out on the hustings as well. Do want to acknowledge them today as well.
Thank you, Catherine.
Really good to talk.
Eugene, we'll throw back to you now.
Thank you, Caleb, and thank you very much, Catherine. Congratulations are in order, I suppose, at this early stage for this seat, but we look forward to another 3 years of working with you. So, back in the studio, what we're looking at is, just to reiterate, is a Labor win here in the federal seat of Ballarat. It looks like Catherine King will hold the seat for another 3 years, making it her 6th term in office. She's held the seat since 2001. She won this today with about a 2% swing, more or less, probably about a 1% increase in the primary vote as well. Probably not as closer than we thought.
Yeah, that's right.
Alex, what do you think?
Look, it's hard to tell because you've got Turnbull came in late-ish last year. He set himself up what everyone thought was a huge win whenever the poll would come, but he's tackled a kind of tough party situation, and because Ballarat it's got quite conservative elements as we've seen in the past, and it's got a lot of a real spread across the ages.
Yeah.
So you've got quite a few demographics that you need to look at, and you've got the university population who are probably going to enjoy Turnbull's socially liberal policies a little bit more, or his what we assume to be socially liberal policies, and then put those onto the candidate. And then you've got others who like his business policies and then really like that message from the Liberal candidate as well. And that, we haven't seen that in the votes. We haven't seen that popularity.
Well,
come through.
I think it does say something about the strength of the competition, that even a sitting member with a high profile like Catherine has actually had a swing towards her, of course, strengthened her hold on the seat, but it's not quite as great as the national swing towards the Labor Party, which is being measured at roughly 3%. Interesting other point probably to draw from the interview with Catherine that we just ran was I think she feels very proud of not only the campaign the Labor Party has run over a difficult and very long campaign, but she seems to be, I think, giving some fairly quiet, fairly assured approval of Bill Shorten as leader. I'm probably leaping to conclusions here, but obviously in the situation where the coalition is returned with a narrow, very narrow majority, possibly a hung parliament, the first question that will be asked, of course, is will Bill Shorten stay on as the leader of the Labor Party? It would seem the outcome of this election or of this campaign would be in his favour. He's obviously campaigned very hard and very strong on certain issues. Catherine certainly, in her own words, seems to be extolling his campaigning. So that'll be an interesting next question, depending on the outcome of tonight. I don't think anybody yet is really quite game enough to actually call the national result. I believe even Anthony Green is not game. He's called a few more seats. He was getting close to 72, was he? Or 72, 76 seats required to win nationally.
So he's called 73 for the coalition, 66 for the ALP. And 5 others, and that includes we've got independents, we've got possibly 2 Greens, definitely 1, and a member of the Nick Xenophon team in the seat of Mayo, where the somewhat infamous Jamie Briggs has conceded.
Probably some other interesting things worth just dwelling on briefly. Corangamite, the seat just to our south, our southerly neighbour, a lot more marginal than Ballarat and was certainly showered with a lot more gifts. It looks like the coalition has held that fairly comfortably with a quite small swing to the Labor Party. So Sarah Henderson will be retained as the member there. Dan Tehan in the seat of Wannon, which takes in Beaufort, Ararat, quite a lot of the western areas to our neighbours to our near west, has held on comfortably in what is generally considered a very strong coalition seat. To the north, Bendigo has been held at roughly about the same margin as Ballarat, so that's increased Lisa Chester's position there in Bendigo. So not a lot of big changes here in regional Victoria.
No, and Labor's held McEwen as well.
Yeah,
we had that car crash of a candidate who was, brought down by his Domino's ordering skills. So that's a whole bunch of seats there that have been held, and we've got Labor to the east and Liberal to the west.
It is increasingly looking like Victoria is not the battleground state that anybody predicted. It seems to be Queensland and New South Wales that are really showing the changing seats that are holding things in balance. Having said that, though, there's a few seats undecided yet, so we're not willing to call it. But what we will do, though, is probably keep you updated on our blog, and as long as we know. And what we can say safely now in conclusion is although we've still only got we've got roughly about, what have we got of our two-party preferred there? We've got nearly half the vote in, and it looks pretty comfortable, as we said, that Catherine King, the sitting member, will be returned with an increased margin, probably of 2%.
And in the day or so to come, we will look at what that means for Ballarat. Obviously, Catherine being returned means that she'll try and deliver on some of those promises. But the question is now whether we get Turnbull, Shorten, or we go back to 2010 and the fight there for government.
Yeah, and look, after a hard-fought election, I think the Courier's position hasn't changed. The Courier's position has always been for Ballarat, and the problems that we had on Friday as a city will be there on Monday, and we'll be there banging our drum and knocking on doors to ensure that both our return member, Catherine King, and the national government, whoever that may be, is held accountable and is doing the best for Ballarat. So that's all from us at the Courier. Alex Hamer, and I'm Eugene Duffy. Good night.
Thank you.